December 31st, 1978, the NFC playoffs. And as usual, another appearance by the Minnesota Vikings. The opponents were the Los Angeles Rams, a team that had never beaten the Vikings in postseason play. Through the first 30 minutes, Viking quarterback Tarkenton filled the air with footballs, rallying underdog Minnesota to a 10-10 halftime tie. But in the second half, the Rams ended their long drought against the Vikings. They finally defeated Minnesota in a playoff game. It had taken them 10 years to do it. Not many observers expected the Vikings to beat the Rams that day, but then few thought Minnesota would be in the playoffs at all. 1978 was a different kind of season, as the Minnesota Vikings had to claw and scratch for their accustomed NFC Central crown. Yet even with the loss of key players and an influx of new ones, Coach Bud Grant's Vikings won a 10th Central title. 10 was a significant number in 1978, as number 10, Tarkenton, had his most productive season while setting several new NFL records in the process. 10 winning seasons for Bud Grant, 10 Central Division titles, and an unforgettable year for Tarkenton. In Mankato, Minnesota, even the ears of corn could hear the distinct sounds of Viking summer camp. Another season had begun.
Ready.
The Vikings opened training camp later than anyone else in pro football. For a veteran team like Minnesota, there isn't much new to learn. But in 1978, there were fresh faces on both the coaching staff and on the squad. For them, it was a period of learning. Meanwhile, the discerning eye of head coach Bud Grant looked for new talent, men who would blend well into a winning system.
I think winning begets winning, and if you find out how to win, the more ways to win, it's something that prevails on a football club. I don't think that our team feels they're ever going to lose a ball game, that they'll find a way to win.
Summer camp provided rookies and free agents with the opportunity to show what they could do. But it was also a testing ground for 18-year veteran Tarkenton, recovered from a leg injury and ready to step back into his old job. After just 10 days in camp, the Vikings came home to Metropolitan Stadium for their first preseason game. The coaches used this game to look at the young defensive linemen. How well would number 1 pick Randy Holloway, number 75, play with the veterans? It was a question quickly answered. Randy Holloway's NFL debut was a rousing success. By the end of preseason, the Minnesota Vikings appeared ready for championship play. In 1978, Minnesota would capitalize on the other team's mistakes just as they had always done. Against Tampa Bay, special teams ace Fred McNeil made the most of a Buccaneer error. Yes, opponents were still forced into making turnovers, but then so were the Vikings, and they were costly. Through the first 6 weeks, Minnesota could muster but 3 wins. The most disappointing loss came against Seattle, who beat the Vikings on some 11th-hour place-kicking heroics. The situation was now apparent. In 1978, the Vikings would have to fight for everything they got.
We many times won most of our close ball games. This year we lost a very close one to New Orleans, a very close one to Seattle, and a very close one to Tampa. We have to win the close ball games, and I think most of our games are going to be in that category.
Minnesota's first 2 wins came on Monday night appearances, and both were close contests. In week 2, rookie kicker Rick Danmeyer proved he would be a capable replacement for retired Fred Cox. Danmeyer was responsible for all of Minnesota's points as the Vikings edged the defending AFC champion Denver Broncos in sudden death overtime, 12-9. 2 weeks later in Chicago, the Vikings struck early, then had to hold on to preserve a 24-20 decision. On the first series of the game, Tarkenton hit Sammy White for a touchdown. And then defensive end Mark Mullaney, number 77, and linebacker Matt Blair, number 59, teamed up for a score that widened a lead Minnesota would not lose. 1978 was the year the linebackers took center stage for the Viking defense. They were shaken by the death of their coach, Jocko Nelson, but their play was a testimonial to his patience and teaching. They emerged as perhaps the best linebacking trio in the NFL. Jeff Seaman was the club's leading tackler and the heart and soul of the defense. Seaman's performance was so exceptional that he was voted the team's most valuable player. Matt Blair's fame spread beyond the Twin Cities as he was named to the Pro Bowl for the 2nd straight season. The 6-year veteran is now regarded as one of the top outside linebackers in the National Conference. Number 54, Fred McNeil, played effectively in his 2nd year as a starter, but he had enough exciting plays for the special teams as well. Both Blair and McNeil still play on the kicking units, even though they are starters, a refreshing fact in this age of specialization. Even with the efforts of the linebackers, the Vikings found themselves with a 3-4 record as they reached the midseason point. Now would come a showdown with the upstart Green Bay Packers, who came into Metropolitan Stadium with a 6-1 mark. It was a game Minnesota needed badly if they hoped to win their division. One key to victory would be the neutralizing of Packer running star Terdell Middleton, the core of the Green Bay attack. The Viking defense rarely gave the youngster a moment to himself as they hounded him all afternoon. Minnesota's defenders held the Packers to a single touchdown, then turned matters over to the Viking offense. Big play coming up here for the Vikings. Score tied at 7-7. Ball at the Packer 4-yard line. Tarkenton back to pass. Has good protection. Looking left, looking for Rashad. Passes in the air. Touchdown. Rashad has it, and the Vikings take the lead 13-7. Tarkenton back to pass now. Vikings have just a 7-point lead. Into the end zone it goes. Ahmad Rashad is there, and he makes a diving catch, and the Vikings go ahead with a commanding lead. So we have a race in this Central Division after all. The Vikings have met a very big challenge and win it 21-7. Just 4 days after the Green Bay game, the Vikings found themselves in Texas on a Thursday night playing the Dallas Cowboys. Not enough time for Minnesota's old men to recuperate, said the experts, who predicted an easy win for the Super Bowl champion Cowboys. It didn't quite turn out that way. A national television audience saw Chuck Foreman rip through the Cowboy defense for 101 yards. Then watch Dallas mistakes and Viking opportunism translate into a 21-point first-half explosion. Minnesota's use of multiple offensive sets confused the Cowboys' flex defense as the Vikings chalked up a big victory. Now, Minnesota was on a tear. With 2 big wins behind them, they gained the momentum to assume the dominant position in the NFC Central. During their winning streak, 3 victories came against Central foes, including wins over the Bears and the Lions. Against Detroit, mid-season acquisition Greg Coleman immediately upgraded the punting game. There were several other heroes on the Vikings specialty units: McNeil, Blair, Holloway, Scott Studwell, Steve Craig, and Kevin Miller, number 87, who minimized rookie mistakes while leading the squad in both punt and kickoff returns. Young players made contributions in all team areas. John Turner, number 27, showed promise at cornerback in his first NFL season, while second-year pro Tom Hannon, number 45, won the starting free safety job with his hard-hitting style. Strong safety was patrolled by Phil Wise, number 29, who made more tackles than any other member of the Minnesota secondary. The starting cornerbacks were Bobby Bryant and Nate Wright, who have 21 combined years of pro experience between them. Wright enjoyed another good season in '78, playing with an aggressive style that also saw him come up with 5 interceptions. Bryant's 7 pass thefts led the squad for the 2nd straight season and for the 4th time in his career. After almost a dozen years of service for the Vikings, Bobby Bryant is still doing his job and doing it well. The blending of veterans and youngsters was an ongoing process in the secondary, just as it was in the defensive line. Third-year man James Duck White, number 72, nailed down a starting job by mid-season as he showed continued improvement. Another former number 1 pick, number 77, Mark Mullaney, came into his own in 1978 as he led the Vikings in quarterback sacks. Playing alongside Mullaney was number 69, Doug Sutherland, who bagged his share of quarterbacks as well. These men, plus rookies Holloway and Lyman Smith, joined forces with Minnesota institutions Carl Eller and Jim Marshall. Eller completed his 15th year as a Viking by leading all linemen in tackles and ranking 2nd in sacks. Marshall, meanwhile, continued to make history every time he suited up. The 41-year-old Iron Man started every game to give him NFL record totals of 266 consecutive games played and 254 games played with one club. Jim Marshall, Old Man River, just keeps rolling along. Right behind Marshall in durability is center McTinglehawk, who anchored an offensive line in a state of flux during 1978. Because of trades and injuries, veterans Charles Goodrum and Ron Yary were joined by youngsters Wes Hamilton, Frank Myers, Jim Huff, Dennis Swilley, and Bob Lingenfelter. They received on-the-job training as they learned how to open holes not only for backfield starters Chuck Foreman and Ricky Young, but also for Sammy Johnson, Brent McClanahan, and Robert Miller. But running was not something the Vikings did very much of in 1978. A short passing game took the place of a ground attack, and its chief participants were Ricky Young and Chuck Foreman. These two athletes had a combined total of 149 pass receptions, the highest number ever by a pair of running backs. Young alone caught 88 passes to lead the NFL and set several league and club reception marks. Foreman added 61 catches, which made him the most prolific pass receiver in Viking history. He also led the club in rushing for the 6th straight year. They may not have traveled the most conventional paths to gain yardage, but gain it they did. Well over half of Minnesota's total offense came from the talented hands and feet of Chuck Foreman and Ricky Young. Minnesota's receivers are among the most admired in all of pro football. And in 1978, they added to their reputations by setting a score of new statistical achievements. Sammy White caught 9 touchdown passes, the most in the NFC. No other Viking receiver has more career touchdown grabs than White, who set a new standard of 28 in only his 3rd pro year. One of the most interesting stories of the season was the re-emergence of veteran tight end Bob Tucker. With the emphasis on passing, Tucker was able to win the starting job from Stu Voigt. He then went on to catch 47 passes, a total that would have made him the leading receiver on 13 other NFL ball clubs. The man on the flanks most often called upon was Pro Bowl MVP Ahmad Rashad. Rashad led all NFC wide receivers with 66 catches, a number that set a new Viking record as well. Over the past 3 seasons, no other player in the league has caught more passes than Ahmad Rashad. In 1978, the Vikings passed more than any team in NFL history. Sharing in that record were quarterbacks Bob Lee and Tommy Kramer. But both spent most of the year watching from the sidelines while their talented colleague, Francis Tarkenton, played the season of a lifetime.
I'm playing right now as good as I've ever played in my life. If I'd ever played any better than it had been against the rule playing against me. I've really thrown the ball more accurately now than I have in a long time. And, I'm not as quick as I was 7 or 8 years ago, but I'm still quicker than most of the quarterbacks who are playing today.
At 39 years of age, he could still burn out the lungs of defensive pursuers, a skill that saved the Vikings time after time. In 1978, Tarkenton led the NFC in 4 passing categories, which added to his already existing league records for pass attempts, completions, yardage, and touchdowns. With seemingly no more worlds left to conquer, Tarkenton took on new challenges and met them all. If ever a year belonged to one man, 1978 belonged to Fran Tarkenton. Tarkenton and the Vikings' most memorable game of 1978 took place on December 3rd at snowy Metropolitan Stadium when Minnesota hosted the Philadelphia Eagles. The Vikings scored on their first 2 possessions with Tarkenton hitting Sammy White for both touchdowns. However, Philadelphia retaliated and took a comfortable lead. Yet after Philadelphia's fourth score, the Minnesota special teams came up with one of their most important plays of the year. Randy Holloway blocked the point after to keep the score 27-14. 2 Viking touchdowns could still win it if the defense could hold. And they did. The comeback started when Tarkenton found Ricky Young making it 27-21. And then, with only minutes to play, the Vikings got one final chance, starting a drive 90 yards from the Eagles' end zone.
Time is running out for the Vikings, trading the Eagles here 27-21. Tarkenton takes a snap, fades back to pass, good protection, steps up in the pocket, fires over the middle. Sammy White is there, breaks to his left and gets it out to about the 44 to 45-yard line. Big first down, 21-yard gain. Tarkenton back to pass again. Just about 2 minutes left, 4th and 10 from the Eagles, 37. Looks, over the middle it goes. Bob Tucker is wide open, he has it. Big first down for the Vikings, a 27-yard gain. And the 4th down pass is complete. Now Tarkenton back to pass in the Eagles' 20-yard line, fires into the left corner near the end zone. Rashad goes up high, falls into the end zone under double coverage. Touchdown Vikings, tied the game at 27-27. Rick Canmar adds the extra point, and the Vikings take the lead 28-27 in a game they have to win. Have to keep in mind the Eagles still have an opportunity to get the ball one more time. Vikings leading now by 1 point. Ron Jaworski back to pass, circles right, looks, fires over the middle, and it is intercepted. Matt Blair has it. And the Vikings have this one wrapped up. Big win for the Vikings and a tough loss for the Eagles. Vikings are very much in the playoff picture, and are they happy? Ooh, my, oh my, on this bitter cold day, I don't think the fans even know how cold it is. The Vikings win it in the closing seconds.
The Minnesota Vikings, 10 seasons of NFC Central Division championships.